This has been in the works for a while. This here is my Intarsia fence for the High-Tech Diamond 8-inch flat lap. And of course, this is the production model of it, version 1. And I'm really happy with the design. You know, you can simply clamp it on and it'll be a nice firm attachment. Now, the reason for the clamps and the reason for the design is because there is variation in their plastic moldings. So when you get your unit and you set it up like this, you're going to check it for square. If it's not square, you can loosen the bolts with some 1/2-inch wrenches and put some thin strips of aluminum from like a soda can in there so that we get a perfect 90-degree angle and not a 89.8. Because this is important coming into doing Intarsia work, that it is square. Now, I didn't only create the one, I created 20 of these. A bunch of them have already sold. At the time of posting this video, I do have 5 left. And if you're interested, you can send me an email, currently rockhounding@gmail.com. They cost $70 with free shipping in the United States. And I will pin a comment down below this video when they are all sold. If you're interested in getting any of these in the future, I will probably do a future batch run of them. But priority access goes to people over on Patreon first. And if there's anything left over, well, they will come here. Well, let's get right into this. We're going to be making a simple piece using this gunnery point picture jasper. Let me know what your thoughts are on this. What picture do you see there? It's going to be a little picture frame, and I want to use this white dolomite to kind of frame it along with this black basalt so it looks like a matted picture. Doing any of these Intarsia pieces, what you'll find is that you're going to spend a lot of time going back and forth between your trim saw and your flat lap. I've been using these really thin Jingling branded blades. They're just like cheap Chinese blades, but the kerf is incredibly thin. And now that that's kind of cut out and we're kind of near the lines, you do have to start grinding to your line to get the bulk of the centerpiece kind of shaped. Now, in the background here, you can see my Alsasona Intarsia machine. And now that I have that, and I have this fence, while the Intarsia machine is nice to use, I would definitely say it's not a necessity. And, you know, there are certain operations where it's nice to look down, but, you know, all things created equal. If you're like me and you get it for a couple $100, go for it. If you're trying to buy a new one from a manufacturer out there that's $1,500, I would hold off. At $1,500 for a full Intarsia setup with their jigs, you're approaching the price of a faceting machine, and you're going to be way happier with that. So now you can see we got our centerpiece kind of all done, and it's important to really check these for squareness and get this as good as possible because everything is going to be based on this. And if this is not actually a rectangle, we need to fix it now. It's really like a now or never thing, and it's good to be as accurate as possible. I'm just using these cheap calipers. Like, they're nothing special. They're like $20 on Amazon. I would highly recommend them. I mean, you're not machining anything. You know, we're just measuring rocks. And now we got to start to do the white border strips out of the dolomite. And I'm just kind of getting them close. You know, any of the excess we will be grinding off, but as we grind off, well, that takes more time. So if we can shorten that by spending a little bit more time at the saw, it is definitely worth it to do that versus grinding it away. We need to make sure our glued up surfaces are perfectly smooth. So every surface that gets faced with another surface does get lapped. I like to make these little tape handles, and we're just using a well-worn 180 grit lap. And really for almost everything that you're seeing here, using an electroplated lap, it's a well-worn 180. Before gluing up, though, I want to remove any dust, any slurry. Obviously, things are washed. Depending on where you're at in the process, using acetone can be good, or denatured alcohol. You know, the acetone will dissolve glue, so we don't want to do that. So we can switch between the two. I use a CA glue. I'm using Bob Smith Industries, and it's really pretty basic. And I'm doing my glue ups on this piece of glass with wax paper because it doesn't stick to it. So a little bit of CA glue on there. You can be a little liberal with it. You put a little much on there is fine. And line them up, get them just right, make sure you're where you want it to be, and then we activate it. I like the activator sprays. Some people aren't a fan. I'm a fan of it. I think it works incredibly well, and obviously it speeds up this whole process, which is time consuming. With the first border glued up, we do have to grind those little hangover nubs off. Now, it's kind of nice to always flatten the back of it just a little bit. Any of that glue squeeze out will affect the 90-degree angle because it's a little raised. So we're just flattening it out here on the 180. And then we move to grinding those little nubs off. It can be a little time consuming. You want to basically watch for that gap between the center stone and the lap, and you pretty much watch it shrink up and go back and forth, check it, make sure you're doing it right, and you want it to be as perfect as possible for the next glue up. You basically rinse and repeat. I did that on the other white border, and then I did it on the black border, and that's kind of where we're at with it. We are going to be thinning that black border out a lot, but now we have to flatten this thing as much as reasonable here at this stage. Definitely the back does need to be very flat because we're putting a backing stone, and I'm also flattening that here as well. The goal with this piece is to really have it look like a little framed painting, if you will, just obviously smaller. So it needs the backing stone. And right now I'm mixing up a slow cure 2-part epoxy. Once again, I'm using Bob Smith Industries, but there's lots of different 2-part epoxies that are really good. And you just mix them up in a little cup, equal parts, follow whatever the manufacturer says, obviously. And just get this thing and smeared around with a popsicle stick on my backing stone. And once we do that and get that kind of all in place and a nice generous coat, it's fine to have extra. I would prefer to have a little extra that will squeeze out. That's better to have too much than not enough here. But it does start to get to the rewarding part of this, which is kind of some of the assembly. Here we go. Now you'll see my little clamp setup there because these kind of want to hydroplane away from each other. So I set up my little clamps and we get these things on there, and it will cure for about 24 hours before doing any of my extra steps. So you just let it sit and give it a good cure time. And this is what we have. We have this fully cured up piece, and it looks a little rough right now, to be honest, but we'll be taking care of that, no problem. That extra on the side, I'm just going to trim it off, and this is, well, it's starting to look like a real little nice piece, We do have a bunch of extra material, but we're going to start by flattening that back, getting any of those little glue spots off. Now we can start to use the fence again, since we're going to be a nice solid flat 90 up against that. And we got to grind through all of that excess material and really work it down and get our final shape, which includes the thinning out of the black borders. Generally speaking, when doing Intarsia work, thinner lines, more lines look better than thicker stuff. So I'm just kind of using the calipers again, measuring these. I want them to be all the same. So if it's off at all, it's really going to catch the eye. And that's not what we want here. We want this to look kind of honestly impressive. We want people to see it and be like, that looks really good. I like to do my final shaping with a 360 grit electroplate. And you'll see here that I'm going to roll my edges. I don't want them to be too rolled. That's why I'm using the 360. And just kind of breaking that edge so it's kind of smooth to the touch. I'm going to do that everywhere on here and get that kind of final shape before going on into smoothing discs, which if you're not familiar with the high-tech setup, they have like a soft fiber resin polishing system, and that's what I'm going to be running up through here, and just go up through the grits just like you would normally would with any other stone. And it can be time consuming, but it is well worth it when you see the results. I hope you enjoyed seeing this process. I'm pretty happy with how this came out. You know, it's an interesting aspect of lapidary that you don't usually see much of, right? And it's very different than all the other forms. Often in the world of lapidary, it is a very like subtractive art form, right? You are looking at the rock and trying to imagine the cabochon that you're going to pull from it, the carving that you're going to pull from it, as opposed to doing Intarsia work where it is additive, right? We are trying to assemble stones into something like this. And I kind of like that whole process. It's also, it is a very time consuming thing. Maybe you've noticed my timer throughout this process. It took me a little over 4 hours of actual like work time to complete this. Some of the more complex pieces that I've done, obviously it took a lot longer. So if you're interested in this, you know, let me know down below. The process of developing this Intarsia fence for the high-tech diamond flat lap was also kind of an interesting thing of just having to assemble all the parts, making things in a big batch for the first time, and doing it all with made in America parts, which was actually a lot more challenging than I thought it was going to be, and a lot more expensive than I thought it was going to be. You know, just as a little bit of a, I don't know, just as a point, right? These little black caps right here, you can get these made in China for 9 cents. Or in the case of mine, I bought these from a company that's injection molding them in Florida, and well, they're $1 each. So, you know, basically 40 cents or $4. So that's just kind of the way it goes, and the way I'm going to try to do business with any products that I develop in the future is focus on keeping my dollars local and your dollars local. Yeah, it was a cool process for me to go through, and I probably will be making more of these in the future if people are so interested. And yeah, in the coming weeks and months or whatever, I will be putting up here on Patreon or on Patreon more Intarsia videos. However, a lot of them will probably be a lot longer and will never make it up onto YouTube, because every time I put up a long form video on YouTube, well, nobody watches it. So we're going to be doing that here. So if you have a fence, if you have an Intarsia machine or a faceting machine, because a used faceting machine, or I guess a new one even, is excellent. That is that is like what if you're into Intarsia work, you should be focusing on getting a faceting machine, right? Like that's just, you can do so much more. But yeah, we'll be doing some more long pieces, jewelry type of pieces. And that's another thing. Like I have struggled with what do I do with all these rocks, right? Like I love going and collecting rocks, cutting rocks, polishing rocks. But I'm like, I want stuff that's like this, where it's like a cool little art piece, right? Because I'm not wearing jewelry. You know, I have no interest in making jewelry for other people. I want to make stuff like this. So, hope you liked it. Subscribe, thumbs up. Tell me what you like it. I don't know, all those things. All right, everybody. Y'all take care, and I will catch you in the next video.